where ideas take shape, thought find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, one of her advocacy making lackluster leaders legendary, and of course, a performance improvement consultant, none other than Miss Deborah Laurel.
Thank you.
Welcome, Miss Deborah on Abstract Essay. Can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Well, I've been doing workplace learning and performance improvement for over 40 years. And that means that I go in and I help organizations that aren't seeing the results they want because very often employees are leaving, they're discouraged, they're not performing up to speed, their morale is low, and they don't feel appreciated. And I work with the management team to show them how to create a positive and supportive work environment where employees want to stay and do their best. And that involves learning how to delegate, how to create a motivational environment, how to give good coaching feedback that's constructive and useful. And I can hear myself in an echo. Did I do that?
Okay, okay, I will fix it for you. Go ahead, Miss Deborah. I fix it.
Okay. Um, well, that's what I do. I work with the management team, and
And thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Deborah. Thank you. And today let's talk about how to keep employees beyond the obvious. When we talk about keeping employees, we often jump straight to solutions like raises or perks. But what is the root cause of disengagement or turnover that most leaders consistently misdiagnose?
throwing perks at the problem doesn't fix the problem. Um, Creating a feel good feeling doesn't mean that people are doing good as leaders. Employees need to feel valued. They need to feel that what they're doing makes a difference. And one of the problems that I see is a good 60% of new managers fail within the first 2 years, and they fail not because they are incompetent or because they woke up planning to be evil and unimpressive. They don't know what to do. They were high performers as individual contributors, and the assumption was made that they would therefore be an excellent manager, and that's not the case. We need employees need someone who recognizes their value, who helps them feel that they're part of something larger that's important, who gives them the skills they need, the feedback that they need. So many employees have no idea where they fit in the cosmos of the organization, whether what they're doing makes a difference, whether anybody is even noticing what they do, because they so often don't get any feedback whatsoever, good or bad. I have a wonderful story about what it means to make an employee feel valued in an organization. There used to be a Parker Pen Company in Janesville, Wisconsin, and they were doing a tour of the assembly line where people were putting the pens together, and they were soldering and doing things. And so they were stopping at each station and asking people what they did. And they got to a woman who was seated at a bench with 3 boxes. And it was very obvious that she was taking the little clip that goes on the pen and putting it on the pen and then buffing it and putting that in another box. So they asked, but she had seen them ask everyone else. Excuse me. So they asked her, fully expecting that that's what she would say. But that's not what she said. What she said was, I'm responsible for the image of Parker Penn. Because if these clips aren't aligned exactly and they're not buffed so that they shine, it gives a very poor impression when somebody puts it in their lapel pocket. And that's not the image we want for Parker Penn. And I'm in awe that someone took what is obviously a very simple job and made it important for her. And what she says is absolutely true. It's absolutely true. So having a manager or a leader who is able to look at each person, not as a widget or a cog in a wheel or some budget item that needs to be crossed out, all these layoffs that are happening, and instead sees the individual, sees all their strengths, sees what they can offer to the organization, recognizes how important that is, and gives that employee that feeling. What I do makes a difference. Somebody notices, somebody cares. I'm not in limbo. I'm being given good feedback, constructive feedback. I'm recognized for what I accomplish. I'm assisted and coached rather than penalized if I make a mistake. I feel psychologically safe. I can make mistakes and it's not going to come back to haunt me. It's seen as a learning opportunity instead. All of those things help an employee want to stay. Now, pay certainly doesn't hurt. Paying someone what they're worth in the market, giving them opportunities to grow. There are many employees who voluntarily leave organizations either because they've got a bad manager or they haven't been given an opportunity for growth. And it's so easy for an organization to provide that in general. I'm sure there are some specific organizations that would disagree, but in general, to give somebody a challenging assignment, to cross-train them, because nobody should be indispensable, to take their knowledge, if they are a seasoned employee and they are doing things that other people don't do, that information, that knowledge needs to be gathered and recognized and valued. Giving them funds so that they can get training, having a career path so that they can grow and take their skills higher, and having 2 different tracks, because unfortunately, sometimes the only place somebody has to go is into management, and that may not be their forte. That may not be what they want to do. And as a matter of fact, I've talked with employees who say, I don't want the stress of being a manager. They recognize that it's a hard job. So there needs to be some career path that lets employees grow higher and more deeply into their expertise. And I'm doing a lot of talking.
Miss Deborah, you've suggested that managers should ask, what would you make you leave? What is the more powerful forward-looking alternative question leaders should regularly ask their team members to preempt retention issues?
To ask them, what do you need from me? Because the manager sets the culture. You know, if the manager takes the time to say, to ask, what do you need from me? And listens to that and then acts on that, that would be fantastic, because that gives an employee the opportunity to say, I need more opportunities. I need delegated authority to do my work. I need more resources. I need more support. I need to be recognized for what I accomplish. I need to be given good feedback. There are so many different things that employees need. When I do training of supervisors and managers, one of the first things I often ask them is, what do employees need to be successful? And I have them list, and we put them on a whiteboard or on a flip chart, all the things that an employee needs. And when it's all said and done, more than 85% of the items that employees need come from management.
Miss Deborah, in a competitive market, how should a leader's definition of value for an employee evolve beyond compensation to include the intangible daily experiences that truly anchor someone to a team?
You want to ask that again?
Yes, in a competitive market, how
Mhm.
should leaders' definition of value for employee evolve beyond compensation to include the intangible daily experiences that truly anchor someone to a team?
Well, you're saying the answer in the question, I think.
Hmm.
There are those intangibles. You can pay. There are people who will leave a job and take one that is pays less but is more fulfilling for them. Pay makes a big difference, but if you're not in a position, if you're in a toxic situation where you don't feel safe, where humiliation and harassment is the order of the day, where the manager doesn't give feedback, doesn't identify what they clearly want, doesn't assign work in a clear fashion, doesn't provide delegated authority where it's necessary. All of those things can make it very difficult for an employee to perform. And pay alone and perks alone don't fix that problem. And I have a cautionary tale, because I was in a toxic situation, and my the stress was so great I lost the use of my left arm, and I knew I had to get out of that situation. And when I finally found some organization willing to take me, I cried. It was the first time I felt valued, welcomed, a respected member of the organization. So stress does kill, stress does debilitate. And if you are if an employee is in a situation where that's the name of the game, it's time to get out. And I know that's not an easy decision to make, but when you are so stressed and so physically harmed by what you're experiencing, you're taking that home with you. You're taking that anger, you're taking that stress, that worry back to your family and your friends. And that's not a healthy thing to do. So I know in this economy, it may not feel like there are other options, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of us who left corporate jobs, government jobs, nonprofit jobs to start our own businesses because we couldn't find that we were willing to work for somebody else anymore. So there are options.
Indeed, there's a lot of options. People just look around. Miss Deborah, if we view retention as a preventative medicine rather than emergency surgery, what are the key vital signs managers should monitoring their team's health?
What should they be monitoring to ensure retention? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, please.
First of all, is performance failing? Are there more sick days and sick leave absences or tardiness because that person is so stressed or not healthy in the situation? Is morale low? Can you hear people complaining? And I'm hearing the echo again. When people are not participating in meetings, when they're not speaking up, all of those are indicators. And if you know that they're looking around for another job, that they're taking time to interview somewhere else, all of those are very strong indicators that retention is going to be a problem. And when retention is a problem, hiring to fill their vacancies is also going to be a problem because there's going to be the word out that it's not a good place to work.
Miss Deborah, granting a true autonomy is scary for many leaders. What systems or ritual can create a safety for both the employee to act independently and the leader to feel confident that work is aligned with the core goals?
We're speaking about the fear that many managers have about delegating. They feel that they are accountable, they are responsible, they can't trust employees to do the work. Well, there are 6 degrees of delegation, and it helps if managers understand that because in the first degree, the person is just doing their job. It's basic. The decisions they have to make are basic. You don't need to know that somebody who answers the phone has answered the phone again. That doesn't have to come back to you. There are some things that employees do that are at level 2 where they're handling their job, but as a result of their job, they may become aware of some patterns, some concerns, some issues that are recurring, dealing with it internally or externally. And those are things that, although the employee has the delegated authority to make decisions, you want them to report to you so you know, because if there's some pattern of practice or a problem, you need to know about it. Then there is the third level where the employee can make the decision, but they run it by the manager because the manager may have more information that might affect that decision. Okay, those are things but as I'm talking, hopefully you can hear that the degree of independent decision making that the employee has is slowly being constricted. Then it flips into the fourth degree, where the employee can bring a decision to the manager, but the manager makes that decision. The fifth level, the employee can make recommendations, but the manager makes the decision. And in the sixth degree of delegation, the employee can provide facts, but only the manager makes the decision and doesn't discuss it with other people, because generally it's a personnel matter. If managers understand that they can delegate in different levels and different degrees, it's much easier for them to delegate, because they can put in controls and monitoring, and not feel that things are going to fall apart. Now, all of this depends on the manager being a good communicator, being able to say, this is what I need you to do. This is why I need you to do it. Because so often we tell people, do this by this time, this way, and we don't explain why it's important. And knowing why makes a big difference into how people make decisions. So, to deal with that fear that managers have to delegate, communicate well, and follow the degrees of, be very clear. What degree of delegated decision-making authority does an employee have for certain things? Maybe the employee has delegated authority to spend $2,000 on resources or equipment, but anything above that has to come to the manager. The manager can set for different tasks that the employees have what degrees of delegation they have. And that can make it easier for everyone. The employee doesn't feel they're overstepping, and the manager doesn't feel they've lost control. I don't know if that answered your question.
Indeed, Ms. Deborah, indeed. Beyond encouraging time off, what are the proactive structural changes a team can make to its workflows and communication norms to make sustainable performance the default?
What can they do with their workflows to make sustainable performance the default?
Yes, please.
Well, it helps to look at what those systems are. I had a situation where an organization asked me to perform customer service training. And it was very clear that the employees already knew how to give customer service. The policies and procedures prohibited them from doing it. They were supposed to satisfy the customer in 2 minutes. You know, they were supposed to provide certain written materials, and the systems didn't provide those materials. They were supposed to find certain information. Systems didn't communicate with each other, so they couldn't find that information. So they need to look at, an organization needs to look at, what do you ultimately, what's the goal? What do you want to accomplish? And do these systems support that? There also has to be very clear understanding of what performance levels are expected. And those need to be realistic expectations. You know, a workaholic perfectionist manager may set standards very high, higher than many people can meet. It has to be a reasonable expectation. And that's not to say that it goes to the lowest denominator. But if most people can perform at a certain level, set the standard there and provide training and coaching to get everybody else up to speed.
Miss Deborah, let's talk about the vulnerability and strength. How does a leader's authentic vulnerability actually build loyalty and retention, contrary to the old command and control model?
Oh, that's such a good question, Daniel.
Thank you.
The and my brain just went zoop. Sorry. And the about being vulnerable. That is when people are vulnerable, when a manager says, I'm not sure, I need your assistance. I've made a mistake and I recognize that and I apologize for that. That humanity comes through and we we I can't think of the right word. We support someone who is humble, sincerely humble, not lording it over us, not pretending that they're perfect, not someone who ignores mistakes they've made and just goes on without acknowledging that, yes, it was a mistake. All of those things create more trust in someone. Um, is it Ciardi who identifies 7 different things that people can do to create immediate trust? And that's one of them.
Interesting, Miss Deborah. Interesting indeed. Forgiving or receiving honest feedback cannot poison a team. How do you create a culture where a feedback is experienced as a gift and a tool for growth, directly increasing retention?
You've got good questions.
Thank you.
The I'm sorry, it's late, and I
Hmm.
say it again.
Okay, no worries. Fear is giving and receiving honest feedback can poison a team. How do you create a culture where feedback is experienced as a gift and a tool for growth, directly increasing retention?
You do that by using a coaching approach, not
Mm.
pretending that you are babysitting employees who are children, but by treating everyone with respect so that if there is a performance issue, you sit down with them. And can you hear the feedback?
Yes, sorry.
You sit down with them and you acknowledge, here's what's happened, and then ask that person, the employee's perception of the situation, not making assumptions about what that employee was thinking. And then asking is identifying, having them identify the consequences of that behavior and whether those consequences are acceptable. It's giving feedback in a way that that is a conversation with the employee, that doesn't go in making the assumption they were naughty, they misbehaved, and they need to be punished for that. Okay, perhaps they did misbehave. Was it the result of a misunderstanding? I had a supervisor come up to me at a break during a supervisory training and say that she had a problem with an employee because she had asked the employee to do something and the employee didn't do it. And so I asked, well, what did you say to the employee when you made that assignment? And the response was, well, I told her when she gets a chance, I wanted her to do something. Well, a baby boomer knows that when you get a chance means Do it now. A millennial took it literally. I didn't have a chance to do it. So having them talk about that and understand the employee wasn't being insubordinate. That wasn't the intention of the behavior. There was a miscommunication. And so you create a safer culture when you open up conversation. You make it uh, a respectful, equal discussion, two adults talking. And with coaching, if you're going to be coaching, you get buy-in for that coaching. A manager can't coach someone if that employee doesn't want to be coached. So explaining that we only take time with people we care about. If somebody performs poorly and I just write them off, obviously I didn't care. But if I care that somebody perform well and I care about them as a person, and I'm not talking about deep caring or sincere love or anything like that, or even sincere liking, but recognizing the value of the person to the organization and taking time to help them become better by having an open conversation rather than a punishing conversation. That's how you create a culture where people feel safe.
Very well said, Miss Deborah. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please don't listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my Abstract Essay is already in fifth season, Abstract Poetry in second season, and my Book 101 review is coming sixth season next year. Comedy 101 in its third season, Food 101 in its sixth season, Geography 101, Love Letters, Movie 101 review, Music 101, fourth season, Science 101, 611 in its second season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Law 101, Bible Verses 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Deborah, tell us, if a listener takes away only one thing, what is a single most impactful action leaders can take next week?
To set employees up for success, communicate clearly, communicate what you want, communicate why it's important, and communicate how well you expect it to be done. And that will make life a lot easier for employees.
Miss Deborah, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite the listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
I am beginning a LinkedIn Live program on Tuesdays at 10 o'clock Central Time, beginning January 6th, called The Learning Advantage from Insight to Impact, where we're looking at how learning helps organizations be healthier, more sustainable, and effective. And I invite everyone to look at it either on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Deborah Laurel, because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this will rise. So, one more question, Miss Deborah, before I will let you go. The old, well, not the old, how does successfully retaining your top talent actually become your best recruitment tool, creating a virtuous cycle that attracts more of the right people?
Well, you have answered the question in,
Hmm.
in your in your question. When people see employees are happy, they are producing, they are talking positively and proudly of representing their organization. It makes it much, much easier for them, an organization, to attract new talent.
Ms. Deborah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me, Daniel. I appreciate it.
Modicon people, see you soon.